So I'm going to walk you through an investment strategy to make you understand the concept of what I've been doing over the years. The reason for this strategy, and you can adjust it based on your comfort level, and the goal of my speech is so you can figure out what things do you like. Do you like when I talk about low risk, medium risk, or high risk? As I walk through each category, is to figure out what type of investor are you? Are you someone that's excited when you hear about 5%, 7%, 8%? That's super, super safe. That's basically zero risk. Are you excited by the 10 to 30% range of like real estate, businesses, cash flowing, things like that? Or do you like the really high risk, like, oh, I hope I can make 900%, something crazy happens? As I walk through each of these categories, and I'll give you real life examples, I want you to, not tonight, but over the next week, kind of think for yourself, what did I like? Did I feel comfortable, better over here where it's low risk? Did I like the action here in the middle risk? Or did I only get excited about the high risk? If you find out that you're only excited about the high risk, this is why you need to hear the strategy. Because you need safety nets in your life. As you're building up your career, as you're building up your income, there are going to be moments in time where you want to feel like you want to go all in on one thing, on any one project or any one business or any one investment. And no matter how much you love it, you've got to be able to have some safety nets in place. And sometimes it's hard for us to hear that because we're like, no, I really want to invest in this thing, or I know it's going to work. It's got to work. And by the way, even when it works, oftentimes you're not getting any capital return back along the way. So even when things are amazing and you're crushing it and you go from 2 million to 8 million, 8 million to 20 million, you probably are broke or need to borrow money. Even though you went from 2 million to 8 million, 8 million to 20 million. It happens over and over and over because if it's working, you need to pour more capital inside. If it's not working, you need more capital. No matter what, you need more capital as you're scaling. And so the whole concept of the 40, 40, 20 is to protect you from being all in on any one thing, even if that one thing is great. Is that fair? Okay. So on the low risk side, I want this 40%. Let's just use $100,000 as the overarching example. So let's call it 40,000, 40,000, 20,000. This $100,000 number doesn't matter where you're at in life. You could do it 10,000, 1,000, a million, a gazillion. The concept is the same. Is that fair? So when I throw out numbers, don't worry if I'm saying 40,000, if you can only do 4,000 or you can do 4 million. The concept is the same. It's just math. Okay. So on the low risk side, my goal is to make between 5 and 9% for the year. Why? I just want to be battling with inflation. Oftentimes we think about, I just want to have this nest egg. I saved up $100,000 and I'm going to protect it. I'm going to cover my overhead. And that's fair. And that's nice. Except when we have 9% inflation, your $100,000 in 2024 spends like $91,000 in 2025. Spends like $83,000 in 2026. $74,000 in 2027. That's not a theory or political or maybe. It's just math. You guys remember when gas was $2? That was 4 years ago. $2 to $4 is not 9% a year. It's a lot more than that. You guys remember when muffins were $2? I don't buy muffins anymore. They're so expensive. Not 9% difference. Do I buy muffins? I don't buy muffins. I can't. I can't pay $6 for muffins that I know should only be $2. That is not going to change. You're not going to see them roll the prices back on muffins. You're not going to see them roll the prices back on bread, milk, a Ford Raptor, or any type of vehicle. And so the concept is, if you have your money that you're just protecting and not doing anything with, you are literally losing money. Not in theory. The number might still be the same in your Wells Fargo account. 100,000 still says 100,000, but doesn't spend like 100,000. 91, 83, 72, etc. And so I want to be in action at all times, even if I'm just making 5%, 8%, 9%, 7%, just to be battling with inflation. So the concept is finding things that are either zero risk or low risk. Zero risk is something like a CD at Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or Chase. A few years ago, I would never say that. Because a few years ago, it was like 0.5%, 1%. It was useless after fees. But right now, your banks are offering 5.1%. Let's just call it 5% to make it easier. 5% at just your normal bank. So even if you listen to my investment speech and don't do anything, at least move some money around within your own bank to get a 5% CD, just so you're getting something back, because that's as close to zero risk as possible. If Bank of America or Wells Fargo goes bankrupt, we got a lot more things to you got a lot to worry about. So it's unlikely that these household name banks are going to go bankrupt, hopefully never or anytime soon. But at 5% a year, if you move over 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 again, whatever that number is, it can add up over time. It's called compound interest. It's not the number that's going to get you excited, but it's a number that's going to at least be doing something. The other thing is called the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is the top 500 stocks on the stock market. A lot of times people hear the stock market like, oh, that's risky. The stocks go up and down. Oh, that's true. Except over the last 92 years, the S&P 500 has averaged 11% a year. Along the way, there's been fluctuations. There's been recessions, depressions, stock market crashes, war. A lot of crazy things happen, and yet still, over the course of 92 years, 11% average. An 11% average beats out pretty much any financial manager or financial advisor on a consistent basis. There's plenty of things that can happen over the course of time, up, down, 20%, up to 18%, down, pop, pop. A lot of action can happen, but tried and true, you can bet over the course of time that something like Oracle, Google, Netflix, Facebook, General Electric, household name companies will go from 1 trillion to 2 trillion, 2 trillion to 3 trillion, 3 trillion to 4 trillion over the course of time because it's just math and time compounding. There are just more and more humans that are being born, and we're dying at a slower rate. So let me explain. Let's go down the rabbit hole real quick. Us in this room, on average, our parents lived to 73 to 77 years old. 73 for men, 77 for women. Our age group, 25 to 55 years old, are going to live to 79 to 83 years old. Sounds cool, right? Who has children? You have children? Your children are likely to live to over 100 years old. Because when we grew up, we had 7-Eleven, Slurpees, McDonald's, and Jack in the Box. That's it. We didn't have Whole Foods. What the heck's a Whole Food? We didn't have Erewhon. We didn't have fancy grocery stores. Nobody was talking about mental health. There was no ice baths. If you did an ice bath back then, you were a psychopath. And so we're in a day and time that our children are growing up with healthier food, Jamba Juice smoothies, everything from that they're taking into their mouths, minds, and everything around them is healthier and better. And modern medicine is at an all-time high. And every year it gets better and better and better. Our children are probably going to have robotic legs and bionic arms. So they are likely to live much longer than anybody here. Why did I go down the rabbit hole? If you live to 103 years old, let's say your son or daughter lives to 103 years old, but they want to retire at 65 to 75 years old, wait a minute. So before you would die in like 12 years on average. I'm not trying to get morbid with you, but this is just real math. Before you would die in around 12 years on average, let's say you wanted to live off 50 or 60 grand a year, you needed to have $500,000 saved up. What if you live for 38 more years and you want to have 50 or 60 grand to cover 38 more years? Not counting inflation, not counting medical expenses, not counting anything crazy, just a basic 50 grand a year lifestyle for 38 years is $1.9 million. You know what the average American has saved up right now? $5,500. They have an average of $1,200 in their bank account, $5,500 saved up. That is scary. Because when you think about it, if they're going to live a lot longer, and their kids are going to live a lot longer, they have to invest. They cannot get rich from their job. The job can help them create financial independence. It cannot create wealth. Real estate creates wealth. Investments create wealth. The job helps you with cash. It helps you with life. But ultimately, if you just set aside that cash into your Bank of America account, inflation will kill you. Debts, credit cards, expenses, life will eat it up. You have to deploy capital. That's why I'm so passionate about it. I talk about it on my podcast, I talk about it at events, I talk about money and investing, because we all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money. I think it's rude not to talk about it. We have to have these blunt discussions. So if we don't teach our kids, if we don't teach our friends how to save money and invest money, we're literally putting them in a position to fail if we don't talk about it. Okay, so that's the low risk side. That's a little bit of my rabbit hole that we went down. On the medium risk side, there's three main things that I think about. Cash flowing businesses, the stock market, and real estate. On the cash flowing businesses side, we're in a really interesting day and age because the baby boomers, the senior citizens that have built up their businesses, unlike before, they don't have someone to leave their 12 locations of landscaping, or their 12 plumbing locations, or their 12 flower shops. That person, that grandfather or grandmother that built up a business 12 locations, $12 million in revenue. Their grandkids and their sons and daughters, they don't want to take over the business like they did in the past. There's so many more careers now. There's so many more things that kids want to do than take over the 12 locations of their grandparents' place. Nowadays, because of the smartphone, there's so many more ways for them to make money. Where in the past, of course you would take over the 12 locations that's already doing 12 million in sales, and your son or daughter or grandchild would typically step in and take over the business. Most of the time, kids are not taking over the family business nowadays. That's only going to get worse with the power of social media and the power of the cell phone. And because of that, that allows us to potentially buy businesses, take over businesses, or do deals or trades with businesses that are up for sale because people are retiring. You probably see content about it from Cody Sanchez or Alex Hormozi and a lot of interesting influencers talking about this phenomenon. Well, we're going to feel it in the next few years. Like, feel it. You're going to see businesses that you shopped at or bought from for the last 20, 30 years literally either go bankrupt, disappear, or sell to someone. There's not too many other options. And because of that, there are opportunities for you to potentially do deals, acquire companies, work with companies to take over. Why? Well, imagine a business that has, let's call it 12 plumbing locations, doing $12 million in sales. You step in and you can help them with social media, video content, a sales team, fixing their website because they haven't done their website in 19 years. They can't spell SEO. They can't spell AI. They have no idea what AI is. Like, they don't know what these things are, and if they do, they won't do it. And so you can take a business that already has 12 locations and $12 million in sales and probably get it from 12 to 20 quite easily just by putting in some systems for video content, social media, paid ads, sales, website, SEO, etc. A lot of the basic things that feel basic to us, like, oh yeah, of course they should do Facebook ads, looks like rocket science or scary to someone that's 82 years old, been doing the same business for 3 decades. Does that make sense? Also, investing into cash flowing businesses is also something interesting. I invested into a company called Everbowl, for example. I put in $500,000 in 2018. I raised $5 million in 2019. I bought all the locations in 2020 when the shutdown happened. And then a bunch of friends came in and started buying locations. And through that, it went from 17 locations. Now there's 96 locations and one new one being opened every 6 days. That is a cash flowing business that if they would have presented to me at the very beginning when there was 0 or 1, I would have invested. Going from 0 to 1 is really, really hard. All right, Wahoo's has 52 locations. Like, that's hard. How many years does that take? 36 years. Hard, right? But going from 0 to 1 is probably the hardest. Going from 52 to 74 for him, not hard. That's time, math, processes, systems. He's got a whole team that's going to figure it out. Going from 0 to 1, he is the team. You are the team. And so investing into someone that has a idea or a passion open from 0 to 1, or go from 0 to 1 million sales, that is not medium risk. That's super duper 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 high risk. You can do it, and when you get it right, it can have a big return. But I look at cash flowing businesses that are already in action. So I invest in companies doing between 2 million and 20 million sales. That range is what I like a lot. Because that's the range where if I catch it right and they're doing 12 million and go to 100, it's a huge win. Going from 400 to 800 sounds like a lot, but it's actually only double, right? So as an investor, it's not actually that exciting compared to someone doing 12 that I can help scale. And so I raised $56 million the last 2.5 years, specifically for companies doing that 2 to 20 million sales. I come in and really try to find those brands, those products, those services, etc. So cash flowing businesses, you might see it now and think like, wait a minute, my friend does own 7 gyms, or she does own 7 hair salons, or he does have 7 practices for veterinary clinics. You might think about your friend that has 7 of something. You could invest 25 grand, 10 grand, 50 grand in location number 8. Can number 8 fail? Sure, it could. But number 7 and number 8, probably not. They're probably going to figure it out. But 0 to 1, super hard. Does that make sense? Okay, on the real estate side, we're going to have a lot of real estate experts here today, so I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole about real estate, but typically I cover 3 main categories. Fix and flip. So if I'm investing with someone that's really good at fixing and flipping, I'd rather co-invest with them. Dan doesn't fix and flip. If I know someone that fixes and flips, I co-invest with them. Does that make sense? I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and here's why. Let's say I'm standing here and I decide I'm going to buy a property, Newport Beach, $500,000. But then over here is Cole Hatter and Clever Investor, guys that have flipped thousands of houses. And they want to buy exact same type of property, exact same neighborhood, exact same price, 500,000. I am probably going to take weeks or months to buy it because I got to figure out my bank financing, how much should I put down, I got to do this, got to do that, I got to find the right mortgage broker. That's a lot of different things. And I finally buy it, and I Google search general contractor, Newport Beach. Hello? Cole and Clever buy it in like 5 days. They text the general contractor, hey, how's your kids, how's your wife? Get the heck over there, let's fix this place. I'm like driving to Home Depot trying to figure out what to buy. They're done in like 30 to 45 days. I'm taking 3 to 6 months if I'm lucky. You see the difference? That's called the dummy tax. Even if I think I'm smart or I know how to do investing, I will never beat the guys that have done it 1,000 times. And by the time I get to hundreds of locations, which is going to take hundreds of flips, so it'll take time, they're going to be at thousands. Does that make sense? So I'd rather co-invest with people that are already in the game. So if you think about someone or find someone that you trust in your city or in your ecosystem, co-investing with them in the real estate game is much safer because you're going to learn a lot along the process. The other types of real estate are real estate that you never sell. There's a lot of people in the real estate space. What is your one regret? Selling, right? Every single person you talk to in the real estate game, no matter how good it was, they bought it for 600,000, went to 900,000, they crushed it, they made 50%, wishes they didn't sell because now it's worth 2 million, right? Everybody's parents' house was probably 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand back in the days. They sold it for 500 grand because they were geniuses. That house is 1.3 million, right? And so the one regret most people have is selling. So I like to look for investments, look for projects that I put my money into that I never plan on selling. Because if you buy into a mainstream town, a mainstream city, why would you ever want to sell? It's only going to get busier and busier. Our housing supply is millions behind, and we have way more people being born and a lot of people coming into our country. There's a lot of people that want to live here, and so there's just nowhere near enough housing. The shortage is crazy, and there's no way to catch up. There's not enough material, not enough labor, not enough anything to figure out how to catch up for the millions of units that we need in America. So to me, real estate is something that I'd like to invest into and not sell. The other thing for real estate is rental income. This is Airbnbs, this is apartment buildings, fourplexes, duplexes, single-family houses. Same concept to me in rental. I would rather own rental properties that I never have to sell or never want to sell. I also like affordable rental properties because no matter what happens in the market, people will pay $1,600 a month. $6,000 a month, when things get hard, tighten their belts and they move down to a 3K unit, right? So paying $6,000, they might want to switch to a $3,000. Someone paying $1,600, there's not really much room for them to go down in price point besides a few $100. And so in that price point, you will always have someone to rent the property. So I'd rather have 4 properties that are a couple $100,000 each than one $2 or $3 million property, hoping to keep a $6,000 renter. Does that make sense? And the last part on the medium risk is the stock market. The way I look at the stock market is I go after the stocks that I buy the business or company from. Raise your hand if you have an iPhone. Okay, be honest. Raise your hand if you have Apple stock. So out of 150 people, 13 people have Apple stock. Ready for me to blow your minds? So the iPhone first was $800, the iPhone 1. $900, $1,000, $1,100, $1,300, etc. There's been 15 iPhones, averaging between $800 and $1,500. If you bought all 15 iPhones, that's a little bit under 20,000. Is that fair? If the same day you bought the iPhone for $800, $900, etc., and the same day you bought $800, $900 of Apple stock, does anybody know how much your Apple shares would be worth? I do. I regret it every day. $1,150,000. But we knew it. Has anybody here ever watched Netflix? You know what I'm going to say, right? You spend $15 or $20 a month for the last 27 years that company's been around. Last week was their anniversary. And you just kept paying for $20 a month, and all your friends have been Netflix and chilling, and then you don't have any stock. Like, it's the biggest brand on the planet, and you don't have any stock. Be honest, who has stock in Netflix? Exactly. There's 2 people out of 150 people that have stock in one of the most well-known businesses in the history of the world. Who here shops on Amazon? All right, this is too easy. Like, yeah. The things that you buy that you like, if you have a Tesla, get some Tesla stock. I'm not saying go sell your kidney and buy the whole thing, but if you're going to spend $20 on Netflix, could you buy $20 of stock? If you go to Walmart and spend $200, could you buy $200 of Walmart stock? The math and time compounds in the companies that you know, like, and trust. The things that you already buy, you should be considering buying a little bit of stock. And then the last thing I'll talk about is the high-risk investments. On the high-risk investing side, there's 2 main categories for me in my mind. There's cryptocurrency and there's angel investing. On the angel investing side, that's what my passion is. I've done 43 angel investments, and I raised money for 17 companies that I co-invested with, so 60 investments in total, which sounds like a lot. That's over the course of 13 years. So 60, when you divide it by 13, I'm really only doing like 4 to 7 investments per year because I want to be really, really picky about the businesses. I want to be really, really picky about the companies I'm putting money into because I know they take time. I know that even when I'm right, they can take time to exit. And so I would rather take a lot of bets in a lot of different companies over and over and over than any one big bet into one deal. The only time I take a really big financial bet is in myself, if it's my company, my business, my brand. No matter how close I'm with the person, I don't want to put in zillions of dollars on any one project. Or I drip release, meaning I'll put in 50 grand, 100 grand, 250 grand, 500 grand, $1 million over the course of time. I'm not just going to put in a big check in any one deal. This is important because you guys are going to get bombarded with people pitching you for deals. Raise your hand if you are currently a millionaire or in your mind you know for sure you're going to be a millionaire. Okay. With that comes a lot of responsibility, and a lot of people are going to come to you and ask you for money. They're going to ask you for loans, they're going to ask you for investments, they're going to ask you for deals because they're going to think about the capital that you might want to invest into them. You have to be prepared mentally and paperwork-wise to what are you going to do if they approach you? So what I do is one really quick thing. I put it on them. I ask them for business plan, financials, investor documents. It's not a lot to ask for, right? Just by asking for the business plan, they all just disappear. They want me to give them $100,000 and they don't have a business plan. A lot of them don't have a bank account set up, an LLC, investor documents, etc. You can weed out so many people just by asking for the basics. Business plan, investor documents, etc. In those moments that you think, okay, they actually have those things, decide for yourself that it's something that you're willing to invest into for 5 to 7 years on average. When it works, it's typically pretty big. When it doesn't work, you have what's called a 1-to-1 loss ratio. So from a gambler's theory, let's say you walked into a casino with $10,000. You put in $10,000 to go to a casino, and if you had no ID, no credit card, no way to take like a loan or credit, you can only lose the $10,000 that you walk in with, right? That's a 1-to-1 loss ratio. Same thing on investing in a company. $10,000 is all you can ever lose into that company. But your win ratio is basically unlimited. As much money as the casino has, or as much money as this company can grow into, that's your win ratio. That's what's interesting about angel investing. When you're right, like you could have invested into Monster Energy Drink. Do you guys know that Monster Energy Drink is the #1 performing stock in the history of the world? Seems simple, right? Monster, we've been all looking at it for the last 2 decades, every store on the planet. That is the #1 performing stock in the history of our planet. So you can invest $10,000, you can only risk and lose on a 1-to-1 loss ratio, but if you're right or if you win, you have a very unlimited, in theory, win ratio based on the type of company. The other side of it is cryptocurrency. There's 2 main things in cryptocurrency. I look at Bitcoin and Ethereum. Obviously, there's well over 2,000 different coins that are out there. Some of them you are gambling on, some of them you're having fun with, some of them you're hoping something crazy happens, but ultimately I just want to talk about 2 main ones. I did the very first article about Ethereum in 2017. And in that news article, I explained the Ethereum Alliance, the fact that Ethereum is used by over 100 of the Fortune 500 companies. That's interesting to me because there's a use case. Back then it was $19. It's 150 times that now. It's in the $3,000 range. And I'm still a buyer now. Why? Well, if I liked it back then, when I looked like a crazy person with 3 heads, trying to buy a $19 Ethereum, tell everybody about this Ethereum thing, why wouldn't I like it now when it's finally having market adoption, media, people behind it, etc.? If you look at my Coinbase account, I'm still a buyer this week, 150 times later. Bitcoin, the single best performing investment asset of anything in the history of society. Bitcoin is the single best investment in the history of our planet. 14 years ago, it was 6 cents. Now you're talking about $50,000 and $60,000. As an investor, Bitcoin has only had 1 losing year in the last 14 years. So again, from a gambler's theory or an investor's theory, that's a good situation. Most times we're hoping for 55, 45%, 60%, 40%, 70%, 30%. That'd be great. It's only had 1 losing year in 14 years. I'll give you a quick example about Bitcoin, and then we'll go on with the show. So Bitcoin is what I think about all the time. Since 2014, I installed the very first Bitcoin ATM into a casino in Las Vegas called the D Hotel. That hotel, imagine explaining to a casino owner, the mayor, and the governor, putting in a Bitcoin ATM into the most financially guarded institution in the world, a casino. It took me 6 months. We got inside. Bitcoin was $340 at the time. Again, we're 150 times larger now, and I'm still a buyer of Bitcoin. Now, right this second, I still buy Bitcoin. I bought it at $300, and I'll buy it at $50,000, $60,000, and $100,000. Why? Here's why. It's called supply and demand. People know about the theory that Bitcoin will only ever have 21 million Bitcoin ever. What people are not realizing is 4.6 million Bitcoin are missing. People lost it from their wallets. They transferred it incorrectly, so they can't get it back. There's no customer service for Bitcoin. There's no office. There's no CEO. No one to call. So if you send Bitcoin to an Ethereum wallet, it's gone forever. There's nobody to call. So they lost their wallets, lost their laptops, lost it in transfer, or they passed away. Every single day, more people lose their laptops, transferred incorrectly, and passed away. So 4.6 million are missing already, and every single day, more and more and more are missing. So the supply is actually getting worse every single day. However, on the other side, the demand does not stop. The people that like Bitcoin for the last 14 years, as they get wealthier in life, they buy a little bit more Bitcoin. Some people, some countries, some municipalities, some huge fund managers are starting to buy huge amounts of Bitcoin and setting aside. So it's not in liquidity. People are not having access to buy it. Also, out of the tens of millions of people, and eventually hundreds of millions of people that have Bitcoin, oftentimes they have it on their phone or in their wallet, and it's like $50, $500, $200, $1,000 that they don't transfer, they don't use. It's not an action. Because of that, the supply is also less because those are not for sale either. So if all the tens of millions of people that have a little bit of Bitcoin aren't using it, and hundreds of millions of people do transactions, it's like $4, $12, $8, they're never going to touch it. The supply keeps getting less and less and less, but the demand keeps going up. What happens to the math? When new people want to buy Bitcoin, or people from the past want to buy Bitcoin, they have to keep raising their offer price, and that's why we've seen it for the last 14 years only have 1 losing year. So again, as I talk about Bitcoin, it's not for you to go sell a kidney and go buy $100,000 of Bitcoin. I don't know how much your kidney's worth, but let's just call it $100,000 hopefully, depending on how healthy you are. For you to go out there and sell something, go buy a bunch of Bitcoin, I'm not saying that. But owning $100 and $500 and $1,000 over the course of time, as you feel more comfortable or as you have more income, you can buy tens of thousands. God bless you, go for it. But the concept is to understand Bitcoin, because we're no longer in the media phase where they can't even scare us anymore with all the nonsense stories and nonsense articles. Bitcoin is inevitable, is what I say. Bitcoin is inevitable. There is no chance on any mathematical planet that Bitcoin will not be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each over time, and when we're all dead and gone, it will be worth millions per Bitcoin, because the supply will get less and less and less, the demand will grow and grow and grow. And so as you listen to me talk about these different things, about the different investment categories, which ones matter to you? Which ones were interesting to you? Because you got to figure out what type of investor are you. Are you someone that wants low risk? Are you someone that's medium risk? Or someone that wants high risk action? And again, if you care about the high risk the most, or that was the most exciting, you need to implement medium risk and low risk into your life to protect yourself. I don't want any one investment that can hurt me. I don't want any one deal that can cripple me. You got to stay in the game. And so if you go all in on one angel investment, you're like, this guy, he's opening a bunch of gyms. I'm going to put my whole $500,000 savings into it. If it doesn't work out or it takes a long time, you're crippling yourself. I'd rather you want to go for it and put in $200,000, $100,000 in this one big investment. You can do that, but then split up into the medium risk, the low risk, and protect yourself. And also one last thing. Investable capital is not the amount of money in your bank account. Your goal to surpass a huge percentage of America is literally just getting to 6 to 12 months of your overhead saved up in your bank. If you can get to 12 months of your overhead saved up in your bank, meaning your overhead is $4,000 a month, you can get to 48,000 saved up in your piggy bank, set aside, you are literally ahead of America. Let's not talk about third world countries, but just like everyone. Just having money saved up for your overhead. In case there's a rainy day, in case there's a shutdown or something crazy, you've got money saved up. That's goal 1. Getting to 6 to 12 months saved up. The next goal is, what is the excess cash that you have that you can either put aside or that's coming in a consistent basis that you put aside forcefully? Most times, what I've watched many football players, rappers, friends, influencers, models, etc., go broke over is overhead. They go from making $4,000 a month to $6,000 to $8,000. A house, they have some kind of huge liquidity event where they make a $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, something crazy happens, and all they do is increase their life. They go from a 2-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, 1 cars to 3 cars, 1 watch to 4 watches, and they're just increasing their spending, and they don't know why they have no money, why they don't have anything saved up. It's because they're increasing their overhead. So as you're going through your path in life, and by the way, as I'm saying this, you could be far ahead of this, but this still applies for your kids, for your friends, for your employees, for people in your circle. So I'm not saying things at you. There could be people that you could talk to in your life, which is what I'm passionate about. Is if you can protect people in your world, your kids, your friends, your family, your staff, you can literally change the trajectory of their whole life. Just telling kids and friends to not go get a 4-bedroom house when there's just 1 of them or 2 of them living there. They're never going to even go in the 4th bedroom. They don't know where it is. There's just furniture there that's just sitting there. They don't need 4 bedrooms and 5 bedrooms. They don't need a 3rd car. They definitely don't need a 4th watch. If you can protect the people in your world, you're literally changing the trajectory of their life. Because imagine, instead of them spending $3,000 a month, they spend $2,200 a month. And you save them $800 a month for the next couple of years. That's $10,000 a year of liquid cash. They would have to make like 16 to 20 grand a year just by you telling them not to waste money on a 4 or 5 bedroom. Them buying a 2nd, 3rd, 4th car, 2nd, 3rd, 4th watch, etc. I'm not saying to not buy one. I'm not telling you don't buy a watch or don't go to Starbucks, don't buy coffee. It has nothing to do with that. It's excess spending on things that we literally don't need, which is increasing our overhead just because we increased our income. If you can stay the same and stay in that 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom for X amount of years, and you can save up 20 grand a year, that 20 grand a year can literally turn into 30, 40, 50 grand a year just by doing basic things that we talked about today. So I implore you, as we sit here tonight for the launch of Elevator Funding, and I appreciate you guys coming out here, think about what type of investor are you. Make sure to talk to your friends and family about these type of principles and become a really good investor, and it'll change your life to create generational wealth. My name is Dan Fleyshman. I appreciate it. Thank you guys.